All right, welcome everybody to the ADHOC Technology Committee of Southampton. We have a presentation tonight from Whip City Fiber. Joining us are Rick Carnal and Brian Sullivan. Take it away, Rick.
Great.
Rich.
So let me put the agenda up. If I can figure out Zoom here, I'm usually a Teams or WebEx person. How do I take control to put up a document?
I think I can give you that permission. There, you should have the permission now. And it looks like a green arrow on my screen.
Okay. Share screen. Okay. Okay, that's not join this call. Can everybody see this?
Yep.
Yeah, but it's Dan's announcement of the meeting though.
Okay.
So you can only share one document at a time, so you have to stop sharing probably.
Yeah, Dan, you'll have to take your agenda down.
I don't have it up. It's not me.
Okay, so it must be me.
Yep.
Like I said,
So after you hit that green share button, yeah,
Yep.
it should tell you to stop sharing on this one, maybe somewhere up top.
Dan, you can also force to stop sharing on your view options at the top of the screen as the host.
Force the stop sharing options.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to email it to Dan.
Okay.
Post it up. How's that sound?
Yeah, sure. No
What?
problem. You're gonna Okay, I'll start sharing my screen. Tell me if you all can see my screen.
Okay, I sent it over.
Dan, I think you could stop. There we go, sharing screen.
Okay, I just hit my stop sharing. So
there we go.
Okay, so now I'm just waiting for the email to arrive.
I think we must have a conflict in.
Just arrived. Okay, so let me get the file open. Okay, is that the right screen?
That is it.
Let me make it a little bigger. Hang on. Wrong way. Okay, how about, is that good?
Looks good to me.
Yeah.
All right, take it away.
Okay, so I don't think we have to spend a lot of time about the benefits to Southampton. It provides residents with what would be a brand new state-of-the-art all fiber network, which is completely scalable, has a lot of reliability, and has a lot of bandwidth. And is scalable in that it can grow to up to 10 gigabits per home over time. It's mostly software upgrades and some hardware upgrades. But the internet is really a vital part of education, remote work, telemedicine, entertainment, communications, and all kinds of future IP applications. It can also be a driver of economic development, and it's one of the keys to attracting new businesses. So just a little bit about our network. What we offer at Whip City Fiber in Westfield is 1 gig by 1 gig service. So 1 gig to the internet, 1 gig from your home to the internet. So it's really a robust service compared to a cable network, which is probably 200 or 300 megs down to your home, but probably 10 to 25 from your home to the internet. So very robust synchronous service level. If you want to move that down a little bit, I can't see below there. What do my notes say? Perfect. So like I said, it's high reliable. What we build for a standard network. And we've done this in Westfield itself, plus 19 hill towns. We're completing our last 4 right now. We've built all the networks, and we are currently doing home installations. So it's a high reliable network, as I said. And the way we've designed it is there's a fiber literally for every home in the town. So we go out and do a census of all the homes in the town, do a census of every telephone pole, the distance from pole to pole, as well as what addresses are served off each telephone pole in the town. And that pre-survey allows us to get a baseline level of design that we can get and apply and design a network that fits the town. In our design, what we do is we actually put in extra fiber for potential growth of new houses being added in and things like that. And the reason we do that is extra fiber is pennies on the dollar now when you build extra fiber into the network versus adding it later, which is a whole nother construction process and takes a lot more time and a lot more capital to reinvest in the system. So we basically future-proof our fiber deployment by maximizing the fiber counts where we can and putting in usually about 20% extra fiber throughout the town. If there are spots in town where development is expected, then we may even add additional fiber to that area. But basically, we try to do most of the construction work, spend most of the capital at the very beginning of the network. Any questions so far?
Makes sense so far, I think.
Yeah, it's basically a branch and tree network. You basically start at one location and you start branching out down every street, down every side street, to every home. And every one of those homes is a leaf in a branch and tree network. And it communicates at 1 gig up and 1 gig down. So how Whip City Fiber works with municipal partners. Basically, one of the requirements is for the town to become an MLP, a municipal light plant under state statutes. And what that requires is, and Brian is much more of an expert in this area than I, but I believe you have to have a town vote to join it, become an MLP for 2 consecutive years. So some of the towns they work with, for instance, they'll have a December MLP meeting in 1 year, then a May or June normal town meeting in another year. And with those 2 votes, they can now become an MLP, municipal light plant. What this allows them basically is to apply for space on the telephone poles. So there isn't a pretty elaborate application process where most of the poles in any given town are jointly owned by the electric company and by the phone company. So usually it's Verizon and whoever does your electric power in Southampton. And you have an application process to go through each of those. And there's a cost involved when you apply. And then one of the biggest unknowns in the whole project comes up, and that is clearing space on the utility poles for your network. As the person who's requesting space on the poles, you have the unfortunate responsibility to change the infrastructure to accept your network. So in some cases, that means moving one of the current networks up or down the pole to accommodate the required space. And in some cases, it means the pole is too short. It requires replacing the pole and starting over with a taller pole and having enough infrastructure space to allow for the current networks plus your additional network on the pole. And in general, just to give you an idea of what the costs look like, we've done 19 of the hill towns, and the price per pole across the entire town ranged from under $300 per pole in some towns to over $1,200 per pole in other towns. And that was really depending on the age of the infrastructure, the age of those poles. Some of the hill towns had poles that were put in the 1940s, and they were pretty decrepit and pretty short. So that town spent a lot of money to replace all the infrastructure, pole infrastructure in the town. And then what we do is once we get the pole space licensed, by then we usually have a design all ready to go. And that design is, again, going back to our base survey that we do with the poles, houses, and addresses, we can bring it to a designer and have them design a network to our specifications. And we break it into different service areas as trunks leave in different directions. Trunks from, usually it's one central location that you start the signal, and it emits it out in a branch and tree network throughout each section of the town. In most hill towns, there's anywhere from 3 to 5 fiber service areas in each town, and we build them one at a time, but they're each essentially independent networks, leaving that one centralized location. And then we go through and we actually have a bidding process for the network construction piece, and we bid out that process through a bidding process. And we've had, I think, 4 different companies that have built different towns for us throughout our 19-town construction, as well as our Westfield construction. So we use a variety of different contractors. Whoever comes to the table with the most advantages, the bidding process. And in large part too, we provide most of the materials. We bulk order miles and miles of fiber and all the hardware and all the components of the network, and we stock those in our warehouse in Westfield. So that piece, basically, we pass those along at cost plus a small markup for the warehousing of 4.32% to our partners, which is a very good deal, because right now fiber is anywhere from 14 to 18 months lead time to get fiber, as all the infrastructure bill is freeing up this money to build all these networks. The fiber producers cannot keep up with it. So those lead times are getting pushed out further and further as we move into the new money that is becoming available for this type of work. And then what we do is we also hire, we have a kind of a fiber home installation company that we have contracted for to do installs. And we actually, as customers sign up, and we have a whole marketing process, a whole back end customer relationship management software that captures all the applications. And we go through and capture that. Then we arrange for the install of every customer that wants a service as we go through. So that's pretty much what we do during the process. We are, in the 19 towns I mentioned, we are the internet service provider and network operator, which is part of the contract. We do all the project. I should say that we do all the design, project management. We bid out the construction, and we bid out and take care of the installs. We manage all that. We do quality control on all those components. So we do really pretty much cradle to grave on the entire project. We do offer full internet service provider services. So we run the network, we take the customer phone calls, we do the repairs, we do the home repairs, we do all of that. We operate the network, and we do that for a wholesale cost per customer. The only additional cost beyond that is if there is a repair in the network, then we have a suite of contractors and personnel that are within our organization that would go out and repair service if a tree comes down and takes out the network. So those kinds of things do happen. Last week at about midnight, in the middle of Coleraine, Massachusetts, a tree came down and took out our fiber network along with Verizon, along with MBI, and all the networks. And there's a photo floating around the organization of all 4 networks on fire as they melted. So those kinds of things will happen. I think specifically with Southampton, there are some advantages when we talk about using us. We have a common border, of course, so we can actually look at extending our network into Southampton. And there's a couple ways to do that, depending on what the long-term goal would be, whether you want to build the entire town, or if you wanted to like test the waters first with a pilot area and do a couple neighborhoods that are fairly near Westfield. We could build to those neighborhoods and do a pilot test to see what the response is, to see what we can expect if you were to build out the entire town. But by having that proximity, we can save some initial capital. You don't have to put the centralized network service facilities in, or the equipment, or independent internet connections, and there's no backhaul costs essentially. So there's I think a good opportunity there to, if you wanted to move in a direction that maybe let you do a pilot test and let you do a small area to test the waters and see how it went, there might be some opportunity there. I'm sorry if I'm going too fast for everybody, but anybody have any questions so far?
I guess the only question I have is, so do you guys just do this out of the goodness of your heart, or like you to help other towns? Like, what's in there for Westfield?
Yeah, so what we do is basically the reason we do it, the reason we started doing this was we are putting down all these resources, all these departments and all this management and all this time. And there's a cost to that. And basically we're going to charge our partner towns per customer for a wholesale charge. For the project management and those other fees, we take the costs and we mark them up a percentage. And we do that in that we can get your network built and become the network service ISP. And that allows us to incrementally hire more people to do more of the work. We can bring on more customer service folks. We can bring on more installation techs, but we're not recreating the wheel for our partners where they'd have to get a general manager, expensive IP engineering technicians and things like that. We can leverage all those towards basically an efficient way for you to get into the business, get into the network, and also allow us to be most efficient with the capital that our shareholders and stakeholders have given us to spend. What it is when we go into Southampton, we actually by state law cannot spend our capital. This is where you're putting up the capital, you're putting up the expenses, and we become your contractor. So for instance, when we end up bringing customers on, we have a payment portal which flows the money into your bank account. Then we bill a town, say Southampton, for your services next month for the average number of customers we had this month, plus any other services we provided. So the way you'll see the project kind of go out, if you looked at the business plan for it, was upfront, you will spend some money. You'll spend some money for pole applications. You'll be paying Verizon and the electric company to make any modifications they need. You're spending capital. Then you'll spend more capital when you build a network. Then you'll spend more capital as you do each house installation. But then as soon as you get a customer, that revenue starts coming back to you. So if you're going to say have a $75 service and our fee is, let's just say, rounded off to $30, there's going to be a net gain there every month to start paying back the project, paying back the debt service on the project. And at some point, get you into the black.
Is that neighborhood trial program what you're currently doing in West Springfield?
It
Rich?
is. We have 3 neighborhoods. We've already applied for the polls, waiting for the poll applications to be processed and get that ready. And then we're going to be doing a trial. That's actually how we started in Westfield also.
Is that,
I wasn't there then, but they built a pilot area where they had a mix of residential houses and a mix of businesses. They built it and they wanted to see what the results were. The results were better than anticipated. Then they bonded for $15 additional million to go build the section of the Westfield we have completed. We've completed just over 70% of Westfield right now. And every year we identify 3 or 4 more areas that we're building out. So we're kind of self-capitalizing the balance of the build.
gotcha.
So Rich, is there another network coexisting with what you've established in Westfield? You're not the only game in town in Westfield, right?
No, we compete against Comcast. Verizon has DSL.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
And in general, how I would term is we exceeded our expectations, and our expectations were to get 30% market share. And what we're seeing is after we build an area and it matures to like 6 months, it has great word of mouth. We get additional customers. So we're at about 40% penetration of homes after we have 6 months of service. And it tends to grow over time from there. We get more customers fill in. Basically, I'll characterize, I was in the cable business for 28 years before I went to work for Hoyle Gas and Electric. We did fiber networks and Westfield Gas and Electric. So I was the guy in charge of first launching Southampton when it was Charter Communications or Greater Media back in around the turn of the century. So what we see is we see pretty good response, and our number one, what customers tell us, the number one reason they take our service was word of mouth. And the second reason was they've seen the lawn signs from their neighbors.
Mm,
So,
mhm.
we're doing very well. The biggest objection, or the hardest, I won't say it's objection, the biggest thing you have to overcome when you have somebody that wants to switch to your fiber network, because if they're an internet centric household, they're going to be knocking at your door. If they want to save a lot of money, they're going to come knocking at your door. If they're used to that TV experience with Spectrum can offer, where you get, all the channels you don't watch, but all on one platform with no switching between Netflix to Amazon to Hulu, then, that person that wants that seamless full set of programming is tough to convince to start using streaming TV. So we spend an inordinate amount of our time teaching people how to stream, teaching them that you can get Hulu Live or YouTube TV, which essentially mimics a cable system. You can get most of your broadcast channels and you can get all your cable channels. It's just a matter of you get them in a different fashion. But educating customers on TV is the most time-consuming piece of the whole transfer and winning customer by customer. But typically, a competitive service we offered for $69.95 here in Westfield. A lot of the hill towns charge somewhere between $69.95 up to $110. Those hill towns have no competition, but you can look at what you spend on a Spectrum bandwidth cost, internet cost per month, and you can mimic that, and you'll get most of the business.
Rich, I have another question for
Sure.
you, because if I'm trying to think about, this is a really great discussion and question that I'm struggling with a little bit, because Spectrum is in town, and a lot of households have package deals with phone and internet service. And so just wondering, how do you have an algorithm? Do you have based on your surveys, the number of towns, the footage, the mile, your surveys really then what that percentage is, so that it makes it a profitable, way to generate, get into the black with that revenue within a reasonable amount of time? Like,
Yeah,
how many households?
Well, there's no magic number because it depends on a lot of factors. What's the construction cost for your network? How much it's going to cost you for make ready to get your poles ready? That's a big wild card. No one really knows. Once we get an idea of the and Southampton's not going to be an overly dense town as far as residents go. You're going to have, 25 to 35 homes per mile there. And you're going to get 40% of those homes likely over time to subscribe to the service. I mean, over time, you might get more than that, but that's the initial start. So you basically got to do the math, and you can project what the costs are going to be, what the network construction is. You can at least, put a reasonable estimate in for the pole licensing cost, make ready cost as it's called. And you look at that, and you look at really what your total capital is to spend. You've got to look at how much time it takes you to get the network in place, and how fast you can bring customers on to bring the revenue with it. So, I've seen towns that have looked at it, and some of the hill towns had a pretty quick return because there's no other internet service provider to speak of in those towns. But in our case, we looked at it and our return was better than expected. And so it's all about, I think, setting the right expectations. It might be you're going to be, in the red from the start of the project to when you get fully built out to where you become break even. It could be 6-8 years. But remember, this network has a usable life of its minimum of probably 40 years because it is scalable.
Can you hear me yet?
Oh,
Yeah,
now
there
we
you
can,
are.
Brian.
All right. Hey,
Yeah.
I'd like to take a crack at that question, Kim, because that's a great question to really roll into in regards to that. And something I can supply this group with, I'll do a breakdown of Southampton. And what you'll get out of that breakdown is going to be literally the number of poles in your town, the number of dwellings that dwelling units so that you would know how many people can, whether residentially or commercial, would take the product. And then we can back into the math part and come out with what's called a take rate. And the take rate is the number of houses that you would need to get in order to start, breaking even, or, seeing even a little positive on what you've put into it. Westfield, for instance, when we started, we're looking for a 30% take rate of 70% of the city. So we knew there was outskirts that weren't going to get built right away, but the downtowns and the heavily populated areas accounted for about 70% of the dwellings. 30% of those had to come on and be the take rate for us to break even. We're over 50% right now. So that's a good news story, obviously. And Westfield is in a unique circumstance because people knew Westfield Gas and Electric that turned into Whip City Fiber. It was a known entity here in town. The hill towns, and the question that came up about, are we doing it just for the kindness of our heart? The answer to that is no, except for Westfield did step forward when the governor was moving to the final mile up in the hill towns. And we became competition for Comcast and the others because we actually were building the networks for the towns, and hence the MLP part of this whole presentation is at the end of this, you're going to own your network. So it's not the competitions of the Comcast and having to live with their standards or pricing. You literally are going to, at the end of this, own it. And that's what the hill towns have. There is a little different with the hill towns because there wasn't really an alternative up there. It was DSL or dial-up service, where Southampton, is in a little better condition. But we would do a complete survey for the town and really ask the residents, if you had the opportunity to own your own network, would you? What would you pay? What are some of the reasons you use your internet? I think COVID has shown everybody the fact that working from home and having to, have a good internet product and stuff at their house has turned into almost a sales pitch for us because, people are using it that much more, and business commercial is using it that much more. So it all has to be on how much does it cost to do it, and then what's your return on investment in regards to being the town.
What's your solution for residents that use, say, a VoIP system with their current data provider, for voice? What do you propose?
We have actually, and I'll turn it over to Rich because Rich in my world is the VoIP guru. We have a voice over internet solution. So we do currently is the phones, as well as getting into, like Rich said, the TV too. That's been even in Westfield, that's been a big, it's taken the most time for people to be able to cut the chain and not have Comcast and get into the streaming. But Rich, do you want to touch base on the VoIP real quick?
Sure. So we resell a pretty common product. If you went into a Best Buy, it's called UMA. And UMA is a VoIP phone company. We could put a device in the house. In Westfield, for instance, we charge phone service with North American long distance dialing included, $12.95 a month. It has all the features you'd want. And some of the hill towns do mark it up, and that's an option also. So in Westfield, it's about $12.95, plus it's got taxes and fees, which are always part of government controlled voice service. So, more and more so, we sell a lot of UMA. People also all of a sudden experience Wi-Fi calling on their cell phone. So they get that better experience there also. But voice is just an application, an IP application on a fiber network.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just curious how, if there was a, the packaging of, your internet, your TV, your phone product in the end that would be comparable.
We had to get really good at the phone product in regards to the hill towns because of the fact that they don't have good cell service up there. So their lifeline is is their phones, and they can't be out of service. So that's that kind of came along with growing our products on the ISP side to be able to handle that. And I know Rich mentioned this in some of the maybe too much information for a meeting, but as this grows and we continue talking, we can talk about it. But we do the billing of the products. We are the customer service groups that people would call to if they had outages or something wrong with their equipment. We actually do the dispatch for the repairs and the 24/7 service for that too. So the soup to nuts, I think Rich said, it is really all inclusive, and that's what you're getting as a partner with Whip City Fiber. And one more thing I'll say, and I know Ed will understand this, is the relationship between Whip City Fiber and the town of Southampton. We're both municipality groups, so that the contracts and the things that are intergovernmental agreements, where the bidding process is actually done on our side, where we would send out on behalf of the town, go through, we have chapter 30B, is it, Ed, I think?
Yes.
We have to follow that and our guidelines, and you then therefore are using our services when it comes to that. So you get a lot more. You don't get that with Comcast and the others, but we become literally your partners.
So I have a.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna add one more thing because I couldn't talk before. I have all this stuff lined up here.
You're ready to go now. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the financial things, and again, we can help the town out and stuff. But I know Ed and other managers know about ARPA funds and some of the other funds that the government now is steering towards use of infrastructure, and especially with Wi-Fi and internet services, that there's opportunities out there for the town, to take advantage of the money that the government has in store to use that. I don't know Southampton's situation now, but it's parts and pieces that we're helping with the other towns to come up with the financial support.
It sounds like there's some grant money that is going to become available pretty soon in the spring for some of these types of maybe startup costs or capital
That's right.
projects to get going. My question is curious what this, I heard in the presentation that you actually then turn around and bill the town of Southampton for all of the service that's provided in the town. And then, because we're collecting, I guess, that money, so we're collecting the monthly fees. So
Right.
Are we sending out the bills? You're sending out the bills, or we're sending out the bills?
We actually send out the bills. So let's say the town decides that it's going to be $80. We'll just round numbers for easy, but $80 to have this service. Whip City, we will bill that for you, but all that money collected is going to go into the MLP money. That does not come to us. That's
Okay.
your money. But monthly, Whip City Fiber is billing the MLP. Let's say it's $30 for all the services included, the ISP, the network operations, and everything else that goes to that. So at the end, Southampton is net $50 per internet subscriber that you have. And that's why that take rate number becomes so important, because you can do the math back into what you need to get this built and started, and then what you need as number of customers to be able to run it, maintain it, and to pay for it.
And because we're financing the infrastructure and we own the infrastructure,
Mhm.
if there is, let's say, tree comes down, takes out a pole.
Yep.
That is billed to the town then.
That's right. If like, I think Rich was talking about the fire we just had on one of the lines, but if a tree comes down and knocks out service to one of the streets, our dispatch goes out, fixes the problem. The time and materials of that response would be then billed to the town, billed to the MLP, not the town of Southampton, but
So in the analysis of what the cost will be in the uptake and whatnot, obviously that I don't think there's, that those monies would have to be available. Because that could happen at any time. You could be right in the beginning of a project.
Right.
And something could happen. So there needs to be some contingency funding, I would
That's right.
assume.
Until such time that the network is complete and we turn it over completely to the MLP, That's ongoing construction costs. So if it happened during the construction cost, it will be fixed and repaired and billed during the construction piece. So you're not getting it until it actually is completed and it's turned over. You now own it.
And is it turned over after every, say we do it in 3 phases, or you're saying like after the 3rd phase, we're done kind of thing? That's
right. Oh, well, no, if the first phase was completed and you now have customers, we call them FSAs, basically fiber network, neighborhoods. If FSA 1 got completed and you now have 50 customers on FSA 1, you own that FSA 1 and you're now billing it and maintaining it. So it does come as you complete and start billing a customer for that service. And then at the end, when you're done with your final neighborhood, you have the whole infrastructure is now yours.
Thanks.
So
Sure.
basically what you have to do is build your own financial business model to incorporate the cost from Whip City, I'll say the operating costs from Whip City Fiber, debt payments, or any other operating costs which you build into it, like thinking of the fact that, yeah, every once in a while, it's possible that either through a storm or somebody hitting the wrong pole or whatever, that you could have a fiber break and it needs to be repaired.
That's right.
Or you have to build in the cost into the for future replacement of equipment in the homes and stuff too.
Yeah, that starts taking care of itself as you finish your network, and now your return on investment is in the positive. So yeah, there's always going to be ongoing maintenance or upgrades. But as Rich said early on, we build this for years to come. It's not built and then it's old after we're finished. It's built to, I mean, Westfield's hasn't had to spend a whole lot on new equipment since we started. We're just putting other equipment in other neighborhoods as we move across, doing that last 30% of Westfield.
Mm-hmm.
And we would help you. That's one of the, on that one sheet I was talking to you, I can get the next time around, or at least for your next discussion, is a breakdown of how much it's going to cost you to do the pole applications. And that's literally, as Rich said, that's Verizon and National Grid doing their due diligence of every single pole. And then it will be, okay, they come back and say, a couple hundred poles have to be replaced or repaired or something. There's physical work that has to be done to put this network. We'll have all those numbers for you as we move through this. So the budget part you'll get, fairly early on how to, and that's why I say you can use some sources of finances. Most of the towns have done bonds, 10-year bonds, 20-year bonds to pay for this, and what that annual or monthly payment is off those bonds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Brian, I know you've got more presentation here. I assume that we need to scroll down on, but two questions, one of which is maybe a silly one, but I'll ask it anyway. Why would there not be any consideration, given the climate change issues and things going on in the world, and the risk of storms and breakages, why would there not be an underground option?
First of all, it's basically built on what your existing infrastructure is today. So when your electricity is going through your streets on above ground poles, that's what the fiber is going to use also. There are neighborhoods, I don't know about Southampton good enough to say, but there's probably neighborhoods that have underground facilities today. Those would then take the underground route to get there. But we would just be using existing, and it's about 3 times more expensive to do underground work than it is.
I figured there was a cost element there too.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, yeah. So, but anybody that might have underground now, like maybe some of our newer subdivisions, for whatever, I don't know, they might have access to that. Okay. And my other real question was more just if you could give us a little bit of an idea on some of the time frames, just the idea of doing the licensing back and forth with the Eversources and the Verizons and whatever. What kind of time frame does that usually take to get that part done? And what are we looking at in terms of
Yeah.
the initial steps? Or and even if we did the, the model tryout, idea with the corner of the town that, is borders on Westfield. I mean, what are we talking about time-wise?
Yep. Unfortunately, some of the longest part of this is the poll applications and that part of it, the initial part. West Springfield is I'll just use them as an example because I know the time frame. It's been about 6 months and we're just getting the okay from the Verizons and the National Grid or Eversource for them on our poll applications. That's strictly just the applications. So we haven't even done the in the street analysis of those poles yet, or any construction or repair of those poles. So you're looking at 1.5 to 2 years, and probably less just because of the number of poles in Southampton, but that's a baseline of how long it takes. And that's why Rich also mentioned you would have to do, I don't think you've taken any votes up to this point to become an MLP, but that is a 2 votes in consecutive calendar years. Doesn't have to be 12 months apart, but it has to be consecutive calendar years, 2 votes. So that clock and the poll application clock can go simultaneous. So that's a long process.
Yeah.
And it's has to do more with the cooperation of Verizon and the Eversources and the National Grids. That working with the power companies is fairly easy and amicable. The Verizons of the world are tough on projects like this, not Westfield in general, but just poll applications and getting that stuff done. So that's why it's kind of a lengthy process.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. That's helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
I do have a question about the at what point is what Whip City Fiber does a billable? Like at what stage? Like, so we talked about the information you'd be able to provide, but at some point then to really engage in this work, what is that point where we start looking at a billable expense?
The poll application part of it is does cost money. So the Verizons, the National Grids, and the Whip City Fibers all would be billing for that service. So it really starts from right at the beginning. Whip City Fiber literally would work on behalf of the town. We have experts that go out and they literally go out and look at every single pole. And Verizon and them would like you to replace all your poles on your dime. And our fight is, well, that pole has been terrible for 70 years. That was going to have to be replaced anyway. So the town's not paying for that one, Verizon. You have to buy that one, or National Grid or whoever. But so the billing, that initial part, and just to let you know, we talked to Williamstown today. They have 1,800 poles, I think. I'm just using this as a reference for that. But Williamstown has 1,800 poles. It was going to cost about $200,000 for their poll applications. So that's a number. I don't know how many polls, and I do want to get that for you guys so that we have it in our system. I say it's easy to get. The person who does it probably wouldn't tell you that, but so that I can come up with at least those first numbers and have the shell shock of how much this could cost. You could understand it better if you can, literally see it in the steps that you do. But the Verizons, the National Grids, and the Whip City Fibers all would be billing for that poll work, that application, and any work that has to be done on those poles.
If you know the mileage of roads you have in Southampton and you multiply each mile by, it's somewhere between usually 30 to 35 poles per mile. It'll give you the approximate number of poles you have.
Yeah.
And that's all great information for you to have at your fingertips, because it brings reality into what you're trying to envision. And you're going to find, if another piece is that test neighborhood, or it would have to be probably about 200 locations, 150 to 200 locations to make it worth it. But to do a test thing, that can also be happening while we're doing, we would have those polls be looked at first, get the okay on those, and start working on your test neighborhoods while they were doing the rest of the town. So
that was what my question was going to be. Like, maybe if it was Whip City Fiber, what would be the optimized rollout path? It sounds like to get our return on investment, if we did the ones that are closest to Westfield, that would may yield immediate or quicker turn on times. Then perhaps you'd aim for the high density neighborhoods, something along those lines, and then spread out from there. You know.
That's right. I think you're hitting on two different things. One, the ease of doing it may be, and I'm not a network builder, construction person, but extension of Westfield services into Southampton might be the route to go. It's kind of what we did in West Springfield was we took it from the border and ran it up, but we also ran it to the densely populated neighborhood too. So for the town's going to want the biggest bang for their buck on the early ones, just to get that many customers in. And we do a survey. Our survey, actually, Westfield came up with a survey years ago, literally asking people to get online and to click on their house off of the website, and that map actually literally started lighting up in Westfield, and they could see where to start. And that's where that test neighborhood came up off of East Mountain Road in Westfield, because it had residents, it had commercial and industrial, all in the same neighborhood, and we were able to test all of the different ones as that came up. But that's where you're going to see the densest part, where you're going to see the people that are really interested in having this product.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. So you kind of just said, click your house if you're interested, kind of
That's
thing.
right. That's right.
And yeah, good idea.
Yep. And then you
So
keep those stats. Yeah.
My comment would be, this is really a market test. We know the technology works. We know customers will want it. The question becomes, it's not a good business plan if only 25%
Yeah.
want it, but it's a great business plan if 40% or 50% want it.
That's
Mhm.
right. And we've done so we've had every different scenario as far as building. Westfield, like I said, Whip City Fiber, Westfield Gas and Electric was a known entity, and we as a city said, yes, we want our own network, and we built it. The hill towns, they didn't have an alternative. So when it came up that street off of the MBI network that the state built, they were all in because they wanted it. They have about a 75 to 80% take rate in some of those towns. I don't know the Beckett's of the world and those ones. The take rate is phenomenal, but it's there. They don't have an alternative up there.
No.
Southampton and West Springfield, and we're working with Hamden and a couple others. That is literally people saying, one, we're tired of Comcast or whoever that will be. Two, we'd like to own our own network and be able to have that as a infrastructure in the town. And three, the cost savings of maintaining it and stuff is a good return on investment.
So could we, I guess, do you still, could we steal that website or that method for?
We would help you build that. Actually, we have our marketing team. When you get us, you get those people with that expertise.
Okay.
Lisa Stowe and there's a couple others in that group literally would help you build that. And
Okay.
That's a piece that comes with us.
So,
Good.
so my understanding then would be if the town wanted to move forward at all, it would look something like Whip City Fiber would bring us to a point for no cost to be able to know what some of these expenses are going to be. So if we wanted to apply for a grant, we'd be brought to a certain point with some estimates based on how many poles, based on the mileage of roads and whatever data that you can provide us. So we can start to get an understanding of what that construction cost or order of magnitude would look like.
Yes.
And then a business model could be developed from there with, or with some to see, gauge interest surveys and whatnot. And then if that business model is developed, so all of this stuff right now is sort of then it would be like a working partnership with the town. And then we would be making some formal commitment for going, the very first expense, as you mentioned, would be applying for pole rights.
That's right. That's right. And actually that part, the first part, which is a lot of what my job is, to supply you with all that. There's no charge. You're not paying for my time and things. But that first vote that the town would take to say, yes, we really like this idea and we'd like to become one, is your first really footsteps into, okay, now we can do the survey because people are energized, and we, you know, it was a unanimous vote in Hamden. Everybody wanted to try it out. So we're moving in that direction to now, you know, put the idea of, okay, now how do we build it and how do we get there and what's it going to cost? And that's where that second vote will come in, and people say, yeah, everything, we still want it and we're still willing, if it's here, we'll change. You know, that's all statistics that you would want to have.
So that first vote just sort of gets the ball rolling and doesn't commit you to anything. It just
That's
adds-
right. You could vote no on the second time around if that was the case. You know, if people decided, nah, it's not for us.
But before you did any of the permitting with Verizon, Eversource, whatever, do you wait for that second vote, or can you start with the first vote?
You can start with the first vote in regards to maybe your test neighborhood and things like that. Globally, town, you know, full town, you'd wait for the second one because you'd hate to put all the resources in to build this thing and then have it fail on your second vote, because you've kind of committed, you know, a pretty good chunk of change for nothing. So, but you could do, you know, it still will cost some money because of the poll applications and stuff in the test area, but that would be a decision. You know, I hate to say it's a minimal amount. Any amount's a big amount, but would it be worth it to do it? And if there was that strong support in the first vote, as you're moving through and people are starting to see this actually come to fruition, that second vote usually has, you know, customarily followed pretty well to get you to the second piece.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of points here to bring up. I did a quick back of the envelope calculations. I just want to make sure I got the right numbers. You said, and I'm going on the low end here. You said about 30 poles per mile. Is that a number?
Per road mile, yes.
So we've got, according to, if I remember right, we have about 68 miles of roads here in Southampton at 30. And then you said, well, approximately the low end was around could be $300 per pole.
Right.
So a real low end estimate here would be $612,000 to handle the pole portion of this. Just as a point.
Sure.
The thing that makes me nervous, and my fault is I'm a retired electrical engineer, so please bear with me. I'm looking to the future, and I'm getting pretty excited about things like 5G internet. I've already have seen, or I shouldn't say I've seen, I've heard of a couple of implementations of this. Starry being one out of the Boston area and others throughout the country. T-Mobile is coming up with 5G internet. And for those who are not familiar with 5G internet, this is wireless, not have to run any fiber or any wires, be working off of cell phone towers, just like your 5G cell phone would work. I see numbers like $50 for T-Mobile. I believe I haven't seen any numbers yet for Verizon. But what do you, and of course, you know, crazy Elon Musk is there. He's got Starlink, waiting to put more satellites up. Again, a wireless approach. What do you guys see in as far as the future? I mean, hate to be running all this fiber and going through all this expense, and a couple years down the road, everybody and his brother is running 5G internet.
So let me speak to that a little bit. I mean, when you build and go into the internet business, you're entering a competitive market. Right now, your chief competitor is Spectrum. Verizon has DSL. Verizon is building out 5G, and even for residential internet. Now, as of last week, the article I read said they'd actually launched in only 2 metropolitan areas for home service. And the way they price it is, if you're a standalone home, you want their home internet service, it was $80 per month. If you are a Verizon unlimited wireless customer, it's a discounted $50 per month. And the speeds I've seen talked about are in the 300 to 400 meg range for that service. I just read a report the other day from one of the research companies, which looks at the long-term market penetration for fixed wireless, and they put it at about 10% of the market over time. But that's once Verizon gets there to your market. Verizon's notorious for building the metro areas, then the best suburban areas, and then, by the time you get to the rural areas like the hill towns that we operate in, you'll never see a 5G service there because it's a small cell technology. So you can't use the current cell tower infrastructure. What you have to do is you have to build infrastructure every quarter to a third mile down every street. So it means adding facilities on top of the telephone poles, things like that, but it's a huge capital expense. So where that capital expense will make sense and where it doesn't will be, kind of the destiny. They had Fios as an all fiber network product. They stopped building Fios once they left the very richest and dense suburban areas. They don't offer Fios in a lot of metro markets, and they don't offer it in any rural markets. So Verizon is going to do what's best for their shareholders. So there'll be a point where they will extend 5G residential, but how far and how soon is the big question. And how much market share will it take if it's let's call it even a 1 gig service? Because at that point, we might be offering 10 gig service to residential houses. So it's a bandwidth race in large part.
I was just going to say, is the bandwidth, what did I hear you correctly saying that the 5G service right now Verizon is offering is only a 300 or 400 megabit?
Yeah, that's my understanding from what I've never used it, but that's what I understand from what I've read.
Okay, which is like we're talking a third of what a gig service that we're looking at for.
Right.
And
bandwidth's important to some people and not important to other people, but generally it's always been a bandwidth race for service providers. And the system that we put in, we feel is scalable for the future, both physical fiber wise and the electronics have a upgrade path to go to 10 gigs for residential service.
And the hard line, the literal build to the house is something that is night and day. I mean, the wireless efforts can work, but they're contingent on geography and climate and other things, where building the hard line down your street and to every door is a much more reliable network that you'll be building. So it's not going to go away. It may get bigger, like Rich says, we may go from 1 gig to 10 gig, but it's not going to be much change in regards to what you have to put in. It's just more information going down the glass to get to the door. So I think for anyways, near future is the reliability and the redundancy built into these networks is superior to the wireless. Of course, I'm gonna say that, but us in Western Mass, it's tough to talk about wireless and cell towers and things like that, just because of so many areas that just don't have it and or tough to keep it.
Back in the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned these central locations that would become the place in which the fiber would branch out from. Are these physical buildings that will need to be built, or are these virtual places up on a pole?
So I think you have the option for either a place on the pole in Southampton if we extend Westfield, or our typical way we build a town is we put a 9x16 concrete block hut near the center of town on town property. And then that's where we put the electronics in. We bring the internet backhaul to that location. Then we build out the network. And if it's on an intersection, there's 4 roads going out, we build it in 4 different directions. Each direction will turn into a fiber service area. But basically, that centralized location lets us evenly distribute the signal, because there is a distance limitation on how many kilometers the lasers will push the signal. So we like to start in the center and work out. So that's usually our typical build. We can do things with the Westfield network and then eventually move you to a centralized location. But the proximity of Southampton allows us to forego that expensive centralized location. The hut and the electronics and the work associated with it is probably a $300,000 investment. So you would save that in a test environment that we simply extended the Westfield network into it. But that's for discussion, I think.
Great.
So with that test network, if we wanted to move forward with a test network, we're still going through the same process with the same costs, except for what you just mentioned, that we could probably just extend it off the Westfield network. But the costs are all similar.
Yeah, that potentially could be a great advantage. I mean, we're looking into doing that for Southwick right now, coming off of the bike trail where Westfield has facilities, that there's neighborhoods right there adjacent to, on the borderline, let's say, and be able to use those as our test. And that has limited the pre-building and some of that work immensely. So I don't know, we can look into that for Southampton, but I think Rich is right on that. It might be a perfect opportunity for Southampton to build off of what we have just come over the border.
The other idea is, I hear Easthampton is also interested in a similar thing. So I wonder if there's possibilities Southampton, Easthampton team up, and hypothetically we go with you, then maybe there's some more cost savings that way. I don't know.
Yeah, we've talked to Easthampton too.
Yep.
We've talked to Northampton. We've talked to a lot of the towns that are near us.
Mm-hmm.
And I just would say, even if I take a neutral position, having our expertise in the valley, I think is a huge advantage for any town that partners with us. Because I know the cost that we charge, and I know the cost that outside consultants and outside managers and project managers would charge, and we're a fraction of those charges.
Mhm.
And we're going to build it because we're going to operate it too. So we're going to build it exactly how it should be built.
Yeah, it's sort of like my neighbor, if you're our neighbor. So if something's wrong, we're going to go over to your house and knock on your door.
We're an easy chokehold away. That's the
Yeah.
good and the bad of it is
Yeah.
you know where we live.
Yeah. One other question, kind of following up on what Kim was mentioning. So if we were to go with, getting the whole MLP, at least with the first vote, talking about doing a test neighborhood on the south side of town toward Westfield, that hub cost that you mentioned in the center of town would not kick in until such time as we decided, okay, the experiment worked on the south side, we really do want to expand this full scale in town. Then you would still have to put that hub concrete structure in somewhere in the center of town, right?
Well, not actually, you wouldn't have to. If you decided you wanted to be linked to us for eternity, you wouldn't have to. But if you wanted to say sometime, look at being an independent or choose a new ISP network operator after 10 years of operation, you'd want to have the central facility. But it can always be put in later. But
Okay.
I think it's just a discussion of what you feel comfortable with.
So,
Yeah.
so is that saving us $300,000 is my question?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah, okay, all right.
It also saves you the monthly operational cost of buying internet backbone bandwidth, because as part of our wholesale ISP, we have internet connections, large internet connections that go to Boston, that go to Albany, that go to New York. They are located at the Cola Hotel in Springfield at One Fed, and also in Westfield itself. So we have this great diversity of backbone internet providers, which is part of our wholesale cost.
So Rick, who do you connect to there's an interconnect in Westfield?
Yes, there's along the railroad tracks. There's fiber along the train tracks, and it was CenturyLink. Now it's called Lumos.
Okay. So you actually have a point of interconnect there, and
And we
then
also
at one federal, you actually have co-location of all your equipment at one federal street.
right. Then we also have one that comes from Westfield south to Hartford, Hartford to Providence, and we buy bandwidth at one summer in Boston.
Okay.
So it bypasses one Fed.
Okay. Fine. So that interconnect cost then would be taken. So basically we'd be purchasing the bandwidth without that additional that connection cost.
Right. It's part of our wholesale per subscriber cost.
Mm-hmm. So that would be a cost savings as well, to do it that way.
Correct.
Because otherwise then we'd have to have a run ourselves for equipment that we would then, or part of our infrastructure would have to come out at a point of interconnect that we would be.
Right. The alternative would be you build a centralized facility, and
Right.
either we go through the poll application and build process to get to that centralized facility and connect you directly to Westfield that way, or we lease an MBI circuit. And a 1 gig MBI circuit is $1,200 per month.
Mhm.
So either one of those ways are a way to start from a centralized facility approach. And speaking for Brian, I mean, I don't know if at some point we have a big conference room. We have lots of masks. If we wanted to have a meeting at our facility, we could walk you through some of the technology, give you a demo of what this customer management relationship system looks like, and take a look at all those different pieces and parts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, seems like a good idea.
Which is always nice to do. It is impressive to go over there and see their facilities.
Thank you.
That's a lot of information. Thank
Yeah.
you. I'm
Yeah,
just
very
trying to
good.
add all my notes.
Yeah,
It is.
it's a good thing.
turned on our-
Dan's- good
We
thing
turned on
Dan's
our fire
recording this.
hoses.
Yeah, you walked everybody through that very nicely.
Yeah,
Yes,
no, it's
thank
good.
you.
Yeah,
From point A to point F, so that's great.
yeah. No, I think we have to figure out, what the next steps are. What more do we need from you for basic information? And maybe it is that estimated number of polls, et cetera. Some initial figures like you were suggesting, Brian, that then would allow us to have some pieces of information that we could move forward with and really talk it through on our end more too.
I will get you that.
Great. Well, thanks for your time tonight. This has been great.
Yeah, Rich and Brian, thanks so much for being available and doing this. It's been very helpful.
My pleasure. Sorry it took me a while to get on, trying to sell technology and then you can't get on a Zoom call. Isn't that impressive? But
I've had issues myself from time to time, so I'm not going to say a word.
it was panic in my face, but
We had to heckle you though.
yeah, I didn't hear any of it. So it was great. I will get that first piece of information over to you, and then you guys can tell us what you want next from us in regards to another one of these meetings, or come out to see our facility, or maybe there's just going to be 20 questions that come up, and you can get us that, and we'll get you the answers.
So my question is, as a town, no matter which way we go, the first step is we have to have a vote, right? You got to get that first vote passed.
Yeah, if you want to become an MLP, if Southampton wants to go that route, it takes 2 votes in consecutive calendar years.
Yep.
Right.
So yes, that would be the first.
Okay.
That would be something you put on the warrant
Mhm.
to have at your town meeting or Board of Selectmen.
And in the meantime, we can be working on gathering the information to present to the townspeople about why
That's right.
Those cost benefit analysis type things. So.
Yep. And I'll supply you with a lot of that information, and you can, use it the way you want to.
Okay. Excellent. Does anybody else have any questions at this point? All right, hearing none, I think we'll excuse the people from Whip City. Thank you very much to both of you.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Thanks.
Thanks
It
a
was a
lot.
pleasure. Thanks a
Have a
lot.
good evening.
Thanks.
All right. Well, that was the only item on our agenda this evening. Does anybody else have anything they would like to bring up now before the next meeting, or are we good to adjourn?
I did find when they were talking about mileage, there's a 2016 road inventory report from
Oh.
Mass DOT, and it said 75.9 for the total, but I'm not sure if I'm even reading that correctly. I can send the link out. We're
Sure.
on page 29 of 117.
Yeah, because usually they'll be listed two different ways. The mileage for the roads that have been accepted by the town, and then the mileage for the roads that are not town accepted public ways.
Yeah, accepted is 66.71, and then unaccepted is 3.83, which doesn't add. Oh, and then 5.36 for Mass DOT, which is Route 10. Is that right?
That's probably Route 10, yes.
In terms of, I guess, Ed, this might be for you, in terms of process, I know that Whip City Fiber came in before and did a presentation to the select board a while ago.
Yes.
And did the select board vote on anything at that time, or was it, I mean, what was the outcome of that?
It was just informational at the time.
It was, okay. And do you know, Ed, if there's anything, any obligation on the town's part, even though all of the bidding would be done via the, the Mass General Law agreements for municipalities for construction phase and whatnot, is there anything that binds the town for us to get multiple, to be able to work with a provider? So, I am interested in hearing Holyoke Gas and Electric, just to compare and contrast and see what they have to say.
Yeah.
Because I know they're in the business of doing this as well. But is there anything that we would have, that we're obligated to do, to partner to do something like this?
Say that again, or ask that again?
Is there anything under, I know Mass General Law for procurement, we're gonna have to go through who, if they're sending out, requests for proposals and they're bidding out the jobs for the poles and whatnot, they're gonna follow the right regulations, and therefore we'd be covered if we sign an agreement with Whip City to move forward. But is there anything that obligates the town to look at somebody other than Whip City?
No, I mean, we might want to, just to get some
Right.
other feel for it, but no, it's done through an intermunicipal agreement, so it's not like we have to use pre-quotes or anything like that.
Okay.
And I think the last time when they did come to select board, it was when I first got on, so it's gotta be like the end of 19, I think. I'm thinking that it's posted up on our website, but I'm thinking their presentation is, I'm thinking it was like $8 million or something, was the price tag? Something.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
remembering like 5 or 6.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
my estimate at the time was like 6.5 million, just based off what the cost
Yeah.
was back at.
Yeah, something like that anyway. So, when we had them come in, it was just basically for information to say, okay, well, what's out there? And then everybody was kind of shell shocked with the price, and we didn't pick it up and go anywhere further with it until recently. So, yeah, so.
The good news on this, since I've been on my high horse about actually what we have for capacity with debt exclusions, is because this has to be done and the town has to create an MLP, a municipal basic light plant, that debt actually falls under the MLP and not the town. So even though we only have like $200,000 left for capacity in the town to reach our debt ceiling. And MLP would be a totally different entity, be held to that standard.
Right. Okay, that's good to know. So we don't have to take it out of the same pot then in that regard. So, but it would be still probably like a 10-year borrowing. Is that right? Something like that?
Oh, you're probably talking about a 20 or 25-year borrowing.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
What does that look, what does something like that in you know, sort of dollars and cents look like to the average taxpayer then?
Well, you can't say to the average taxpayer because it's not. It's just like that enterprise fund for your water that comes to you in Southampton. It's through a user fee. It's not to the average taxpayer.
All right, so it's the user fee, so it's the.
So
it's
if
just-
it just happened to be that
Yeah.
$79.95, you know, that's paying your operating costs and all your business costs, and it's going back to paying that those
Like
capital
that.
costs off over a period of, you know, whether it's 20, 25 years, what have you.
Right, so the more subscribers on the network.
The faster you reach your break-even point,
You can
the
pay off the bond.
faster you pay off the bonds, exactly.
Mhm. It sounds like that website is gonna provide an estimate of what that number is gonna have to look like then. I
Yes.
mean, sort of based on how many polls and the
Yeah,
cost
and
per poll.
and it's amazing, you know, like they were saying, okay, they might have to move some wires on a pole, and a pole is $200 or $300. When they talk about getting into the ones that are too short, and if they, you know, if there's not an argument that, you know, either they're dilapidated or have been replaced long ago, basically it's about $5,000 to replace a pole.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, you said the average cost was about 300, I thought 1,200 or something like that, but maybe like you said, if that's just
Yeah.
really negotiating who's paying for what.
Well, when they got into the average, that was basically when you take all your poles together and the ones that just needed the simple movement of the wires to create the space, they're in the $300 range. Your pole
Yeah.
replacements are in the 4 to 5, and you know how many replacements were there, and you know what's the average of the two. So
Right. Hmm.
So is the next step to also get a group from Hoyoke Gas and Electric to come in and talk too, or?
if the committee would like to have that happen, I can arrange for that one too.
I think it would behoove us to see what someone else is saying and kind of hit the same highlights and if they're gonna provide the same type of initial analysis, it'd be great to be able to look at both of those.
Right.
And see how close they are. And knowing some of the things we learned tonight about, you know, we do, you know, about maybe, you know, because we, you know, there's, if we're on the border, if they've already got an infrastructure here, you know, what are those cost savings that we could be potentially, if we partner with someone, all of those same types of questions.
Mhm.
Very true.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Mhm.
Because
reach-
we do have a
Yeah, I'll
town meeting coming up in May, so if we wanted to move on this, we don't need to waste another year. So the more information we have, the better, sooner. And then, you know, if any of the ARPA monies can be used toward anything, I mean, you know, now's the time to start getting enough information so we can make an informed decision.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what I was wondering with that grant that's coming, when we talked about that grant that's gonna help with this. I'm not sure if I haven't looked for any more information about it. I just know based on the timeline that they mentioned that it was gonna become available pretty soon. I mean, I don't know if they're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars being available or what they're really talking about in terms
Yeah.
of
250,000 I saw was the max.
Yeah.
250.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was about 200. I think there's something in that neighborhood that I saw too. And that's separate from the ARPA money though, for town. I mean, that's a separate state grant.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, depending on what we were looking at for, you know, a test neighborhood or what have you, you could actually take some of the ARPA funding, and if we applied for, you know, the grant and got a couple $100,000 out of it, you could combine the two to get where we need to be. If everyone wants to move forward with it.
It sounds like we'd have to have a vote though before, because like, I don't know if the timing of the grants, the grant applications, the award and the May meeting, when you have to at least get your first MLP or how you do it all together. So that's where I can't quite get that timeline down.
I think you can still apply for the grant and take it like okay, we are going through the preliminary phases of this,
Right.
and going to be expending some monies and, taking the vote for the MLP to get to a point where we have, costs and a business plan and maybe are heading into a trial neighborhood.
Yeah, and Kim, don't forget too, like if this grant you're talking about is coming open for a month, it'll close, say, the mid-April time, then, it's usually easily 2 or 3 months before they make a decision on these grants. In terms of the award, in between time, we will have had a town meeting to bring forth the idea of an MLP. So, I mean, I think, you can do a couple things simultaneously. We would not be able to sign any contract with anybody. If we were awarded a grant, we couldn't start any work because we would have to sign the grant contract too, right? So you can't incur any money on it before we had a vote to be an MLP, I don't think, but in terms of expenses per se, would be my guess. Anyway.
Well, that's where the ARPA funds would probably come in.
Right,
and
exactly.
spend those
Yeah,
first.
exactly. Yeah. So,
The question I didn't ask that I should have asked is, okay, if we do a test market, I'd hate to say that it would be a failure. People wouldn't want it after the test neighborhood. But what happens?
When you don't move forward.
You don't move forward. So what happens to the houses that do sign up? They basically then lose their service and they go back to whatever they had before.
We would have probably incurred that cost and what have you, and move forward with that as a basically small separate area.
Gotcha.
It actually has the service.
Yeah. That's what I was hoping the answer probably would be. That would be the proposed answer. Mm-hmm. I mean, regardless, if this is something that is going to go forward, it does sound like this is a, 5 to 7 year project. Does that seems that way? By the time you get the polls and survey 2 years and you phase out your town and.
It's probably realistically, 3 to 4 year to get to your test neighborhood or test neighborhoods, if you do it that way. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a long process.
Mm-hmm. And then your whole town, if you were actually lighting that up, you could say the last phase of it could be potentially even further out.
Right.
Yeah. Westfield's been doing it for a long time and they still don't have their whole town done.
Right. It's those economies of scale again too.
So what I'm getting at is, what is the arrangement with Spectrum as being the cable provider in town, and what have we signed, and are we going to be overlapping that contract with this initiative?
Yes, you'd be overlapping. We've got 5 years left, so you'd be overlapping that initiative. But it's just like, okay, Westfield still got Comcast in there, because there are going to be some people that cannot or do not want to separate the television service from the other two services. They're not going to be willing to stream. And they're going to find that in West Springfield also. But, depending on the demographics and where they go, let's say the younger generations out there that are, new homeowners and what have you, are much more willing to separate those services and do the streaming part for the TV and having a separate internet and phone service, if they want phone service at all, because I know a ton of people that just rely on their cell phones. Mm-hmm. And don't have landlines or voice over IP anymore.
Yeah. Do we have,
There'll be those choices, so they'll be offered, there's more
Yeah.
choices, I guess. There's the a la carte in 2 companies.
yeah. Do we have an idea? I mean, maybe, I guess I don't know this, but I'm sorry, I've lost my video tonight. I don't know where it went, but it was there and it's gone now. But do we have a sense of the number or the percentage of households in town that might not even have internet right now? Is there a way to know that? I mean, that might be a set of households that would never be on this new system anyway, maybe, I don't know. Or not.
I might have some data if they have if they have children in our school systems, but I don't have data on the whole town.
Yeah.
I
Would-
know
would-
parts of Crooked Ledge. My friend lives at 97, way up there, and she has direct TV for internet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they still have it, but it's not charter level.
Yeah.
I live at 113 and I have Spectrum internet. So it is totally on the street.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I guess our charter rep would be able to tell us how many households are hooked up already, right?
Yeah.
They should be
Yeah, and
able to.
I think I'll have to look at some of the well, I won't say the reports, but like some of the payments we got, if it's got a reference to how many are, if it's just how many houses they're going to, or how many subscribers they have, or if it breaks it out via internet or TV separate.
Mhm.
But that might be on those. I'll look.
Yeah. Well, at least even just understanding how many households. I mean, I'd be curious. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, we sometimes think that we're not that well covered, but we may be better covered than we know we are. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
So.
I guess the thing the takeaway, the big takeaway for me is the town will end up owning, it's an infrastructure cost. I mean, we're investing in infrastructure, and we're investing in infrastructure in a model where we can at some point, tip the scale into a revenue operation, where revenue is coming into the town on infrastructure that we own, and then that gives us choices in the future for internet service providers. So again, we might want to stay with Whip City Fiber for some of those cost saving things to begin with, but we don't have to. We could invest some more capital to then truly shop around for our internet services. Once you're connected to one Federal Street, there's a whole host of network operators that you can, that now could provide you with internet service, and you could shop around competitively in the future, or there's something different in the future because you own your infrastructure.
Right.
There's other agreements. So I don't know, it's really for me, the takeaway is, you do end up with all of this money, you own your own infrastructure, your fiber network infrastructure to manage and to allow, to maybe competitively bid services in the future.
Yep. And it's a whole different product too, because we found out in Beckett there was no other alternative, but and of course, okay, Beckett's basically at the foot of the Berkshires, but there's also not a lot of industry or business around. So it was surprising how many people actually worked from home. And even if you had a competitor, like, whether it was Comcast or Spectrum or whatever, just the bandwidth that is available from doing the fiber project, no matter who you do it with, gave a whole heck of a lot more options out there to those people, working from home. And you've also, at least we have some businesses here in, Southampton that I know would take advantage of it. But yeah, we had some people when we were going through it that were either on the finance committee or basically on the broadband committee. They were paying like $600, $700 a month because they were doing their business from out of their homes, and that's what they basically had to pay.
Mhm.
Did you say we had a broadband committee?
No, I said Beckett did.
Oh, I was like, wait, what? I got you now.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else for this evening?
No, when should we have a next meeting?
Well, if we want to talk to Holyoke, right? So, do you want to do it in 2 weeks?
That would be the next regular meeting. It should be in 2 weeks. So I'll see if I can get. I'll get in touch with Marty Cool. I'll get Holyoke Gas and Electric and see if he can get me in touch with somebody in their fiber
That's
section.
Valentine's Day, and I can almost guarantee I'm
Oh,
not going to be around that evening.
I knew it was Val. I knew that.
Yeah.
Okay, so 4 weeks.
No.
No?
We do the 21st. Oh, that's President. That's a holiday, isn't it? February 21st.
Yeah, probably need to come up with a special midweek meeting date.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Actually,
that's
wouldn't
probably
the
gonna be hard
7th
to-
get us back on track?
I think
What's that?
Wouldn't
we
the
need-
7th get us back on track because we only had a week between?
No,
the
7th will
7th?
conflict with conservation, which Art sits on.
Oh,
so
right. Okay,
This committee is supposed to be meeting the 2nd and 4th Mondays of the month.
that's right.
That puts us then to the 28th.
Well,
Well-
no, I'm suggesting that Dan send out one of those wonderful little doodle polls to all of us, and we try to,
Yeah.
like, Wednesday or Thursday night, we might be able to get together.
Yeah. Have a special off week meeting for this. And then your regular meeting whenever, Dan, on the 28th or something,
Yeah.
with the
Okay.
full committee.
Yeah.
Can
So
we get somebody in here as soon as this Wednesday? Just bang it right up.
Well, depending on when Holyoke could be available, but I mean, that might be pushing it a little bit, but
Well, sorry, but if you wanted to have it this Wednesday, it's going to start at a minimum of 8:00. It's going to
Yeah.
be posted for 48 hours.
yeah.
Oh, that's true.
All right. So I'll send out a poll for the days of next week.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
And we'll choose some times and polls I'll put in there, and we'll see what works best for everybody. Okay.
Sounds
Okay.
cool.
All right.
Sounds-
I can
sounds
do
good.
that.
All right.
All right. Well,
Good.
I believe we'd like to adjourn this meeting. Anybody object? All
Nope.
right. Hearing no objection, everybody have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks a
Thanks,
lot,
guys.
everybody. Take care.
Have a great night.
Night.